So it was great to launch CDTRP. It was great to do it and ever like embracing so much, but also capitalizing on what we could do. And I guess that our first very important major paradigm shift was changing the N to a B. And that's because of this guy, Sonny Dhanani, who actually
thought the D was for Dhanani.
he tried to convince us, but we had that some ways to maquillage a bit the thing. But so moving from CDTRP to CDTRP was very important. I was actually looking at the program and looking at the importance of having patient and donors family present within the program, which was not there when we launched the program, and how important it was to kind of restructure the mindset and having a way to approach science that's very different and unique. And then we have Patricia here, Patricia Gongal, who's the executive director of CDTRP. She comes from basic science, and we all of us, I guess, we cherish basic science, but we wanted to change the world and have an impact in everyday life. And this is what everyday lives of patients. So that's why I guess that Patricia is now with us, helping us develop and lead the CDTRP to what it has now become. So I would introduce Patricia. Sonny, the D in CDTRP, apparently is for Dhanani, but I thought it was for donation. So Sonny is a pediatric intensive care specialist at the Children's Hospital in Eastern Ontario. Chio is professor at the University of Ottawa. And leadership positions in organizations that are dedicated to organ donation and transplantation in Canada. I don't need to introduce you. Like everybody knows Laura here, because she's always so wonderful. She is an expert in pediatric heart transplantation. Each of those brag that what you actually discovered is now part of says, obviously, some of the by demonstrating that crossing the embryo barrier, that there was a safety period for doing that, and that saved the lives of tens of thousands of children worldwide. So thank you so much. And she is, obviously, she was my partner in crime, but she is the founding director of the CDTRP. And soon to be past, my goodness, director of the Alberta Transplant Institute. So time flies. So I have to say, so I'm professor of medicine at Université de Montréal. I'm vice director of research at Université de Montréal. But last year I had to say goodbye. It was tough to CDTRP as a co-director, as I became chair of the CIHR Governing Council. So with regards to optics, it was important to we keep a certain neutral distance from organizations who are being funded by CIHR, but there was and there will be no way for me to be neutral about CDTRP. I was and will always be a fan of what has been and is still being accomplished. So thanks to all of you to keep up the flame. And now we are going to be looking at the next 10 years. I'm going to ask Patricia to do a presentation. I hope that thought-provoking. That's what I saw when I look at your slides. And I guess we all need you, to try to, challenge one another, but really look at, what we can do together, at least for another 10 years. So, Patricia?
Thank you, Marie-Josée. Lori and I were on a Zoom call not too long ago with an unnamed third party. And we were talking about the conclusion of the CIHR grant. And the individual said, well, you've had a good run. And Lori and I were thinking to ourselves, each independently, we're not done yet. We're not done yet. Have we got the clicker for the slides? There we go. So that's what I'm going to present today. So I'll share an update from a strategic perspective, from an operational perspective, and then finally open a discussion about some of the big global issues that our field, or well, that all of us face, and what they mean for our community. So first, strategy. What is our vision for the future? And so we presented phase 1 and phase 2 of a national visioning project last year. So won't go too much into the details, but I'll summarize for those who maybe have forgotten or weren't a part of this to date. Our sustainability. How are we going to continue to pursue that vision? And then lastly, what are the big challenges that we need to be thinking about now? So the vision, this was a project that was driven by the ODTC, or the collaborative, from the national feeling that there's a lack of a unified approach to research and innovation across all of the stakeholders in Canada. And this represents a real barrier for working together and to establishing system priorities for research and pursuing those. And the research landscape is very complex in Canada. No single organization has a global view. So this project in phase 1 set out to map the system of research, detail the challenges, needs, roles, and responsibilities, and the interfaces of all of the players. And phase 2 was to develop the vision, how involving all of those stakeholder groups, what future do we want to see for research and innovation in Canada? And then phase 3 is how do we translate that to CDTRP? And where is our role in that? How are we contributing? So in both phase 1 and phase 2, we had arm's length external consultants carry out that engagement work. So it was done by a neutral third party. And they undertook a very extensive process to understand stakeholder views and who those stakeholders are, setting out everyone's roles in terms of funding research, non-funding support for research, networking, the execution of research, and then knowledge sharing and implementation. So the outcome of this is a 90-page report that I would be happy to share with anyone who would like some additional reading. It's really an encyclopedia of the ODT research and innovation system. And so that's a resource that we all have now. And second, phase 2. So the consultants felt it made sense based on stakeholder input to structure this as the research lifecycle. So first, research prioritization. How do we determine what the system research priorities are? How are those decisions made? And the vision, or the future state that was desired by the stakeholder committee, was that the ecosystem can effectively identify, prioritize, track, and support the development of key research topics and capabilities, focusing on the most acute gaps identified at multiple levels: national, provincial level, and others, positioning Canada as a leader, leveraging our existing strengths. Then research execution. The desired future state is that the execution of projects is inclusive, diverse, and collaborative in terms of perspectives, and is aligned on key execution enabling factors across all of the ecosystem participants. And I'll give a few examples of those enabling factors in just a moment. And then lastly, knowledge translation and implementation. The vision is that the knowledge generated by the system is easily and seamlessly shared across all relevant stakeholders. There's a clear understanding of the pathways for knowledge mobilization, and that it's facilitated by a single entity working with everyone to maximize their effectiveness. Well, that sounds nice, doesn't it? How do we move towards this utopic state? So this was one of the pieces of information. And so there's about 20 recommended actions to get to the vision. And so those 2 reports and consultation with our executive committee over the last year, we refreshed the CDTRP mission and purpose. This is on our website, so I won't read through every bullet point, but some of the key things that we retained and things that we added: maintaining a focus on patient, family, and donor priorities. We can see at this meeting the value that those voices have to developing our direction of travel across all of the areas, all of the themes, from basic science to clinical implementation and thinking about long-term outcomes. Knowledge mobilization is as Linda pointed out in her presentation in the media session, is everywhere now in the CDTRP mission and purpose. This really matters. And then adding specifically the aspect or the concept of equity, that the benefits of research should be equitable. And this we need to focus on as part of our fundamental purpose. Also, some updates based on this process to our cross-cutting priorities, things that we think are important across the board, in no particular order. The ones in red are new additions. So we had sex and gender as a cross-cutting priority, and we've added anti-racism, anti-ableism to that. We now our task is to figure out what that looks like in our programming. Suze, I would love to talk to you about critical disability studies and what that could look like. Indigenous populations, we felt would should be a standalone priority, and I'll describe the work that we're doing with Carolyn Tate in pursuit of that. So from a vision and mission perspective, that's where we are. Specific actions, I mentioned there were about 20 recommended actions from the report. Some of those require a lot of stakeholder collaboration, and some of those we think that we can advance and lead on as CDTRP. So one of these is with national research priorities that are developed, connecting funding sources to that, whether that's reallocated funding within the system, partners working together, or new funding sources. And our foundation for where we think CDTRP's role is in this is our innovation grant program. I mentioned in the opening that we passed the $3 million mark of funds awarded through this partnership model for seed funding. We have some ideas to scale this up to larger opportunities that we're working with some partners with, and we hope to have more to share with the community over the next year. Key enabling factors. One of the action points there was to develop recommendations for a unified standard for PFD partner participation in projects. We have the CDTRP platform, the PFD platform, and continuously evolving scholarship and best practices that we are very keen to scale up to other organizations and from a national perspective. Recommendations on how to improve media and public engagement as part of knowledge mobilization was one of the national recommended actions as well. Linda very quickly summarized the work of the CDTRP Media Committee. What she did not show was the homework slide for CDTRP as an organization to develop our communication strategy, our communication infrastructure, to be able to work proactively, reactively on emerging issues on behalf of the research community. Collaboration with partner organizations is one of those homework points that we'd like to continue work on. And then lastly, working with Indigenous nations for their involvement in research prioritization. Caroline Tate, this is a real priority for her, engaging First Nations, Métis, and Inuit leadership. And we are very pleased to be supporting Caroline in her work through the establishment of a CDTRP Indigenous Health Equity platform. So Caroline has a vision to establish a resource for First Nations, Métis, and Inuit communities to bring both from a national perspective and an international perspective to bring the community together to do applied Indigenous health research, to actively train, recruit, and mentor Indigenous trainees and develop new investigators in Indigenous health, justice, equity, and inclusion, and undertake knowledge mobilization so that we have strategies and policies in place that support the health and well-being of Indigenous peoples. So here are some of the initiatives that Caroline has planned that we're really happy to be supporting her with the execution of those. one of the first events that she will be hosting as part of our model working together is a Café Scientifique called the Pathways to Truth and Reconciliation in Organ Donation and Transplantation. So the QR codes are here. We haven't launched the full promotional activities for this event yet, but you can expect those in your inbox soon. So how we're working with Caroline is sort of connects to CDTRP sustainability and our new model of working with researchers. So when Caroline was thinking about how to achieve her goals, I can't speak for her in terms of her exact thought process, but I think she was just thinking to herself, you know, HR is kind of a pain. You know, it's time consuming to hire people, manage them. Maybe she could outsource that. And she thought of CDTRP in our staff. So we're working with her. So instead of her hiring her own staff to execute these activities, she's contracting with CDTRP and we support her in doing those things. So CDTRP sustainability has been a topic on a lot of our discussion tables for many years. And I'm very pleased to present the model that we've landed on. So sustainability includes financial considerations. We need to pay our bills, of course. We need to find funding to do all of these activities. But there's also some other elements as well. We absolutely need to continue nurturing our culture of collaboration, working together, having the support of the research community, doing things that work for our community and supporting research needs, taking risks, supporting the diversity of ideas and people. I think this is a fundamental prerequisite for our to get to the output of our mission, which is advancing research for equitable benefits. On the funding side, we have identified a sort of mix of sources that make sense for us. First of which is grant applications. So Katie and I have written many grants, dozens of grants, I think, this year to support different initiatives on behalf of our programs. Industry and foundation partnerships. Thank you very much again to all the supporters of this meeting and all of our other programs. Those financial contributions really matter. And then lastly, a cost sharing model for our research services. That's the model that I mentioned we're working from with Caroline, and I'll describe that in just a moment. Sustainability also requires governance. How do we make decisions as a network going forward? We have our existing network of research institutions and the agreements between them. And now we have a new tool in our toolbox as well, which is a CDTRP not-for-profit legal entity. So so this summer, we incorporated. So here's a screenshot of the certificate of incorporation. We are our own legal entity. We are not, yes, we, we are not a charity, so we're not seeking registration as a charity. We have wonderful charity partners working in this space. We're not going to develop our own philanthropy strategy. We're going to work with our current partners who've supported us so well to date. So what does this mean? What does this change? What doesn't this change? It doesn't change, I think, the fundamental way that we interact with each other. We are a network of researchers, trainees, PhD partners. Our researchers have home institutions where they hold grants. That doesn't change. And our management team, there's real benefits to having management team staff embedded at the institutions, you know, under the supervision of our research, of our executive members and our senior leadership. And that won't change. But what it does mean is that we have more financial flexibility and independence. We can sign our own contracts, we can forge our own partnerships outside of the limits of the academic research finance structure. If you like to hear more about the barriers of that, talk to Diana. She could probably, yeah, I'll leave it there. The key change, in addition, is that it's the board that has legal authority for the organization now. And so the final model of that, we're going to discuss at the executive meeting that will just follow this one. So executive members, we're going to approve the new structure. That's a change from a single NPA on a grant, which is how grants work, that it's an individual who has the final decision-making authority, but that's going to be a group of individuals now, because that's the way nonprofit organizations work. So from a funding perspective, then I'll explain a little bit more about our cost sharing model for research services and what that means. So very simply, it means that we would love for PIs to write us into their grants, to do things that are useful for you, useful for your research programs and projects. So right now, PIs can request support from CDTRP, form on our website, and we write a lovely letter of support with all of the in-kind contributions that we can make to your project, free of charge to the research team. Now, or very soon, when we fully launch this, when we receive a request for support, we're going to come back to you with a proposal for the scope of work that is useful for your project and a budget of what that would look like that people can build into their grant budgets. And then where possible, we can add additional in-kind or cash supports to support the project to help make the grant look really competitive. And so this is an example budget of a proposal that one of our executive members put in earlier in the year for a planning and dissemination grant. This is a grant to fund the development of a larger project and seek larger funding sources. So they included grant coordination staff, that's Katie, PFD remuneration, meeting venue. That was one of the offshoot meetings, at an event like this, event management, our staff to help coordinate the group and travel then for trainees and PFDs. And we could make different in-kind contributions based on the specific nature of the project. So the things that CDTRP can do for you in terms of research services. So research development and management, coordination to write those big grants, develop the budget, develop the team. We have our network across the country of researchers who are connected through the group, and we can connect you with different types of expertise. Project management for studies that are multi-site. This is, Dimitra's specialty. All of the project management and coordination type tasks that are helpful to do those more complex studies. Our data safety monitoring board will continue with Julie. And so from start to finish, if those things are useful to you, we can help. Communications and knowledge mobilization, we've talked a lot about at this meeting, and I've heard from PIs that this is something of real value that CDTRP can help with. So developing KT plans and then helping execute them through the life of the project, whether that be through materials and Stephanie's wonderful graphic design skills and event management, all of those tasks we can help with. Patient, family, and donor partnerships, likewise, with Manuel and our network of over 80 patient partners. We can help co-write patient engagement plans and then help coordinate over the life of the project to ensure that it works as planned and that everyone is satisfied and that partnership was effective for all parties. So throughout the spring and summer, we trialed this with our patient and very supportive executive committee. Thank you, especially Tom. You've been particularly patient as we've gone back and forth with all of the nuances to what this looks like. We were successful with 9 applications. We submitted around 20, and some we've yet to have outcomes for, but we're really happy with 9 that were funded. And then we took a step back and looked at the overall process and did a reflection on all of the kinks and figured out ways to work those out so that that process is easy for PIs to understand, that is feasible for our team, so we're not overcommitting people to certain types of tasks, and is overall financially sustainable for the network. So this has given me a new appreciation for people with MBAs. And we intend to be ready for launch early in the new year, broadly to have this model in place for the spring project grants for the community. Okay. So that's from an operational perspective where we are. So to open a bigger conversation. So we think we have, our CDTRP sort of strategy going forward. We have our operational model that makes sense. But where are we going from a bigger picture perspective? Where are fields going? Where is the world going? So just a few sort of tidbits for folks to think about and comment on. The funding landscape continues to evolve. International opportunities continue to change. EU and Canada just developed an agreement for Canada to become an associated country to the Horizons program. Lots of folks in our community have wonderful collaborations with researchers in France, in Spain, and other European countries. What are the opportunities there? From a CIHR perspective and others as well, the focus on achieving research impact and benefits is only increasing. How should we be thinking about that as a community? And then there's global issues that affect all of us, that we should think about how specifically they impact our research community, our patient, family, and donor community, our health systems. Some of these, the rise of misinformation. Our donation system depends on public trust. What does it mean that misinformation seems to be having increasing impacts on our political systems, on our democratic systems? Climate breakdown. What does it mean for lung patients when we have wildfire smoke every summer? What does it mean for their families? What does it mean for our healthcare system? What does it mean for CDTRP as an organization? Should we be going for CDTRP net zero 2035? What does that look like? How can we contribute as an organization? Artificial intelligence, how do we consider how we make decisions as a society? AI tools have a very strong track record of increasing inequity. How do we not do that within all of the wonderful AI technologies that are under development in donation and transplantation? And then lastly, the continuing and long-term impacts of the pandemic. We have millions of Canadians with long COVID and other health issues stemming from that. How do we, I don't think we deal with disability very well in the research system. We're not especially inclusive. I think many would say on that front. What does that mean for us, and what does that mean for patients, families, and donors? So with that, I think I hope thought-provoking last slide. Back to you, Marie-Josée.
Merci beaucoup, Patricia. So I'm going to turn to Laurie and then Sonny with regards to maybe the last few items that you touched on. So there are many grand challenges, obviously, that we're all facing, and I guess you've listed a few of them. They apply to transplantation, but I guess they apply to all themes, climate change. How do we live in democratic and hope that our children will still be living in democratic and fair societies, equitable societies? How do we onboard or not, or interact with different intelligences, including artificial intelligence, and how does that become something that's positive and not negative for our well-being? And what I'm hearing, maybe the major thought-provoking idea that you're having is that CDTRP has been thinking about those challenges before they were in the front line. So maybe I'll turn to Laurie and Sonny. Like we've been talking about EDI before EDI was named EDI. We were you and I remember when we launched CNTRP, you spoke in French, I spoke in English. So with regards to, equity, there are also the importance of, linguistic equity and how we relate to one another in a country that has 2 official languages and have a population that's more and more diverse and coming from around the world. Is there a CDTRP model that applies to something that's broader than transplantation? And when I was hearing Patricia, I was actually looking, so I was not taking my mails, but I was looking at MyTax. MyTax was funded by the Network for Centers of Excellence. It was funded by mathematicians and people in informatics. Probably you don't even know about that. They were funded 3 rounds of NCEs that became a not-for-profit. And now MyTax is serving the whole country in a number of fields, making sure that students who want to do field experience and working in industry and academia, like you actually bridge the gap, and they're doing it in a way that they are, funded by federal government now for levels that approach those of the tri-councils. I'm not telling you that CDTRP should do that, but what is the CDTRP model now, Laurie? And I'm asking the same question to you, Sonny. What's special about CDTRP? And are there things that could actually be important for disciplines outside transplantation and donation?
Thank you, Marie-Josée. Merci pour les conseils. I'm reminded of the very beginning, as you mentioned. One of the remarkable things was, first of all, the collaborative spirit, which, and I'd just like to point and bringing in of patients and families and donors as part of that discussion. I would just like also to acknowledge that the 2 of us were naturally kind of complementary. Joining us was that man there, Dave Hartel, who at that time was it created a trio that I think partly by chance was remarkably similar in our philosophies of collaboration. And I think that really helped us look at ways of working together that were maybe natural to us, but were not natural to networks. In fact, quite the opposite. And as things grew, there was also this amazing feeling that there were things we didn't quite know about, but we knew we needed to know about them. One of those, for example, was bringing patient partners and families into the loop. And the 3 of us worked on these things without quite knowing in the beginning how they would work, but that they were things we should think about and explore and find out how they would work and make them work. And that then the Indigenous platform, another example. What happened? The progress that we've made as we've met challenges all along the way. And I think what was seen by CIHR and other organizations, both in Canada and outside of Canada, is that as a model, which has taken hold in other places as well, that isn't limited to the specific topics that we deal with and the things we do, but rather how we do things. And I think some of the things that Patricia listed as looking at ways of the future fall into that as well. And I think together we will find ways to start to address some of those things that have impact on our specific area of research and interest, but also more broadly than that. And I think that also the international opportunities are going to get bigger and better and more exciting as we move forward. Maybe I'll leave it there.
Thank you, Laurie. Maybe Sonny, like what's the CDTRP model, and how DPART benefited from the CDTRP model? How DPART fueled back into the CDTRP model?
Sure. I learned a lot from Heather today, and that I'm not going to answer your question, but send out my message. So when I look forward, at what's coming, and I will touch on DPART, is that I wanted to keep its strengths. And when I sit here, I'm so thankful for the leadership. I'm thankful for my colleagues, the PFDs, the partners, the other members of the exec or the management team for CDTRP, because this is my tribe, right? This is my community. I don't want to lose that. I don't want to lose that in our sense of ownership of who we are. And if I looked at the next 10 years, that's got to stay. And the foundation of that is research. And for me, I was a junior researcher. I see you guys in the audience. I was that. And somehow on one phone call sitting in an airport, I got rolled into this motion. And then the organization supported to get a bigger team and add leverage to lots of people and in fact get funding, right? Not directly from you, but from the way this organization operates. And a lot of it is based on the money, but it wasn't the money, it was the collaboration, it was the network, and it was the fundamental, which then was successful, you know, and one might say lucked out, I would say lucked out, but it was because of pieces coming in at the right time, which could happen to anybody at any time. And then what I'm hoping is that sort of success, mine, others, leverages back into fulfilling that mandate of creating that tribe. And I see that, you know, the science of donation has grown, and there's people here in the audience and people who didn't show up today who kind of were part of that. They're all across the country now. And when we look at other groups like the UK and Europe, maybe not Spain, but Australia, they're looking at us and saying, well, we're envious of you. And so again, when I look forward, I don't want to lose that, where they're looking at us at how well we're doing, how well we incorporate PFDs. And maybe the next is how well we do KT and media, or how well we've gone to a nonprofit and creating a new model of being self-funded to help to do the things we need. I want to be that organization that says we're first. I also recognize that now we've got a big ecosystem. The ecosystem has a lot of partners. There's CST and CBS and patient partner organizations and we're always competing with cancer. Where do we fit now? What's different for me now is for the last 10 years, we were fighting for that space. It feels to me we have a space. But now I want to set up anchors so that we're collaborating with all the people that we thought we were competing with, or maybe they thought they were competing with us, to say, no, we're part of the ecosystem now. How do we put this together? 1 + 1 can equal 3. And I don't know the answer to that, or the timeline to that, but I know we've got the people, we've got the tribe to get there.
So maybe, so I'm going to go back to some of the elements, Patricia, that you described in your last slide, and then I'm going to open it up to all of you guys. And going back to my my first remark about being active in more than one language, for me, this is something that is very, very, very important. I have to say that I'm probably nagging everyone at CIHR because it's in the law, it's in the CIHR Act, that CIHR has to have a knowledge mobilization arm that has an impact on the Canadian population. Well, less than 3/4 of the Canadian population have English as a first language. So I am an ambitious person, not for me, but for the organizations I work with, and we're not going to change the lives of 70% of the population. We need to aim for each and everyone, whether they speak English, French, they speak an Indigenous language, or they are newly arrived Canadians who speak Mandarin. And that to me was very, very important because being a physician, you know, I was seeing a patient this morning who was not fluent neither in French nor in English. And I was thinking, we have this capacity in natural language processing. We have this capacity now to translate automatically. But the technology is more than just the capacity. It's how we do it. How do we learn how to do it? And how do we make sure that it does not isolate anyone? It connects us. Because what Sonny told us, it's all about connecting. You know, it's not about siloing and siloing the people that we think are the brightest and, you know, they are going to do the trick. No, it's about connecting as much as possible. So what the capacity that CDTRP has developed with people being fluent in various languages, including the 2 official languages, and having potentially collaborations with other organizations, how could you be known for the event maker who makes it happen and, you know, 10 languages at the same time? If you're thinking about EU, if you're thinking about, you know, having a global impact, how could you be doing that?
And technology, I think, is helpful, absolutely. But I think it's more than that. You start with valuing that as an organization and understanding that it's not just KT and the impact at the end. It's the ability for scientists to think and work in their preferred language as well. I was really, I don't know if this has happened before at our workshop, but for the Treat COVID workshop yesterday, we designated a Francophone discussion group as a part of that, which was very popular. And so I think we don't need to depend on new technologies necessarily to start acting in a more inclusive way. And it's true, I'll shout out the diversity of the management team. We now cover French, German, Spanish, Portuguese, Armenian within the 9 individuals that we have. So we have I think we have a lot of the tools already if we have the common value.
I would urge you to think about it as, you know, something that's distinctive, and it is certainly needed, and not only in transplantation and donation. And so developing this capacity, but also knowing how to do it. It's not that easy. And for all of you who speak, like, you know, many languages, we're not the same in one language compared to the other. Like, so, and there are things that you share in one language and not in the other. So, you know, having social scientists, psychologists, linguists, you know, working with you, but after that, potentially offering it, you know, very broadly, might actually increase knowledge mobilization very, very broadly, and not only for transplantation and donation. And so in speaking about EU priorities, you know, this is, you know, that would probably be something that would be very well thought of and sought by partners. Anything else you think that, you know, CDTRP should be thinking in moving forward for at least 10 years in the audience? Yes. So, so we have our, you know, our microphone running to you.
It's very interesting. It's always been interesting for me to look at the name of the organization. And I'm sure you had a lot of discussions over this and change it. But what Sonny was saying, okay, so these are big things that you're talking about here. So you presented the fact that you're almost turning more into a consulting organization. So as soon as you're now a corporation, if I hear the word network versus corporation, those are very different concepts to me in my head. They elicit different thoughts. So I think we can't underestimate what the plan is here. And then you start talking about international. If you look at the title, I know the title's gone now, but you know, at first it says Canadian, which defines kind of where our constraints are. And then it says program, and programs, and where I live, they have a beginning and they have an end. So, and you want to be sustainable. So I think these changes are important enough to rethink maybe even what the organization is called. You've done it once, and I don't know what conversations you had, but maybe it's time to do it again, because the way you're talking about it, it's a little different from what I read in the organization's name. So I don't know, maybe if the panel can.
Reactions?
All I can do is nod. This is thoughtful. This is thoughtful. And it was similar conversation when we made the change. I would just say we'd have to balance it. You know, CDTRP it took 10 years for us to get people to say those 5 letters. To change to P to an N would be complicated, but we should reflect on that, you know, and what are the other ways we could do it so that we don't lose ground on a brand name that I think is established, and changing that maybe we need some expert advice on that. Yeah, that's a great idea.
Communications experts, maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah, Laurie, you want to react before? Yeah.
Along the same lines of how will CDTRP adapt to regenerative medicine technologies and fields that are currently not available today, but will be within the next 10-year time frame? And will you open your arms and welcome stem cell therapy in ophthalmology as part of the tribe? And, you know, who will you bring into the club and who will be outsiders?
Great question. So who's in, who's out? Like, how do you decide who's in the tribe?
I think we're welcoming of everyone. I think that people have to choose whether they fit or not, but the welcoming of, I mean, science and research is all about new things and new ideas and embracing something that wasn't there yesterday. Like the panel we just heard from. And you know, it may be defined by what's in our name now, but I think it's more the question of who wants to be in, how much do they see of what we offer the tribe. You know, it's a two-way street. It's not that anyone's putting up barriers, although I do acknowledge what you've said about how the name may itself be perceived as kind of a limit or a boundary. But I would say that what we've demonstrated in the last 10 years, if anything, has been a welcoming of new ideas and an eagerness to reach out and pull in new things. That would be my thought. What do you think?
Great. I agree.
I would hope because that's science and that's research. That's how it'll start, that we're the safe space for people for that example of a group. But there may be anything out there that we haven't encountered yet. And I think we would, be the safe space for them if that group needed support. I think part of what we have to figure out is, how do we offer that support? How do we say, this is who we are? This is how we can help you. That's where I see our challenge now. And that's the conversation, not whether or not they get involved. How do we offer it to them? And what can we offer in return for them joining, as just them as an example? That's where I think we need to be.
One more question, Anna.
Thank you very much. Very important discussion. I've enjoyed listening to it. I'm very curious. I mean, you know, in the current state of affairs in Canada, there's not enough support for science, particularly for basic science. And I would like to hear your thoughts about how you see, what is the vision for CDTRP in the future when it comes to science, specifically scientific themes, because we have, as you all outlined, such a strong collaborative network. We have expertise in a lot of different things. But, you know, how do you see these teams coming together going forward, and mechanisms for grant funding? And, you know, have you thought about some potential kind of permanent source of funds that would support bigger and more ambitious projects? A lot in one question.
Well, we had, it's not that we had an agreement. I think we sort of did, because we talked about, I'm talking about the two of us right now. And then that when we first started talking about, when this even, you know, was just a germ of an idea before the RFA had even been written, Marie-Josée and I agreed that fundamental basic science had to be a lasting element of the work we did together. And I think that is still the case. That's what drives the research. We bring in many other aspects of clinical work, of clinical research, of policy research, of health economic research, of, you know, all the many, many things that we've kind of brought in over the years. But basic science, to me, still has to remain, and I would say that's like still a commitment of the leadership, is that it has to remain a key embedded element of what we do. It may look a little different as the years go by. It may be that we kind of pair in different ways with other organizations that focus exclusively on basic science. Maybe that will bring us new kind of interesting partnerships and so on. I think that the funding issue is a major problem. As you've said, we all know that research funding is a real problem. Perhaps the chair of the governing council of CIHR may want to comment on some of those opportunities. But I mean, it's something we will always commit to.
So if I may add to that, since you referred to me as the chair of the governing council, I guess the tri-councils are, you know, fully aware of the fact that, you know, we need more funding, and the tri-councils are, you know, in agreement with the recommendations of the Bouchard report with regards to the needs for investment in funding, but also with regards to the necessity for, you know, bridging communities. Making sure that the research ecosystem in Canada is less fragmented, more agile and nimble, and that we think about and learn the lessons from the pandemic moving forward. So, so I don't know what will happen, you know, obviously, and around March 2024 with regards to budget, but you can all pray with me that, you know, we are going to do in Canada things that are being done south of the border and in the EU with regards to investing in research and innovation. That obviously is needed. But also we need to think about how do we partner with industry? How do we partner with other countries? This announcement with regards to the European Union is important. We really need to think about it. With regards to basic science, I'm going to actually make a little announcement that tomorrow, as you're part of it, Anna, but for those of you who are interested or about basic science and how it can translate into clinical research, we have this symposium on you know, innate immunity, autoimmunity, and organ injury and how they pertain to transplantation. And when I was hearing this, you know, fabulous panel about tissue injury, we're all focused on alloimmunity or, you know, xeno immunity. We shouldn't forget about danger signals driving inflammation that happen within our own body, autologous body, and how this pertains to, you know, the allo transplantation model, but also xenotransplantation model is probably going to be something incredibly important that, you know, very few groups in the world are paying attention to. And we, strangely enough, have a group of kind of tissue injury aficionado in Canada that, you know, are, you know, meeting, you know, from a, let's say, out of serendipity. I think we have a lot of alignment with regards to a science focus. And so maybe tomorrow, and exchanging with, you know, scientists from the States, but also the EU, we could actually think about, you know, what does that mean for the future? So I think that we are at, do we still have 3 more minutes? No, we're done. So I'm, it's David. Come on, girls. It's David. You know, we cannot say no to David. Okay, so last words, David. Final words to David.
They turned off the mic. Oh, man.
We need the mic runner.
Okay, thank you for understanding, everybody, but David's got to have a word.
I just a really quick comment, just to say, well, first of all, it's great to see everyone. And I just want to say a huge congratulations on what you presented, Patricia. I think it's a fantastic plan going forward. I've been part of those conversations. I know how tricky these things are. It's not a straightforward path. And I think what you've presented is incredibly creative, bold, and ambitious, and I think will serve the community well. You know, I've had a couple of years of being removed from the CDTRP and my, you know, since leaving, I've had so many other groups across the country reach out to me to say, how do we do what CDTRP did? And they're unbelievably jealous of this structure, of the network that was created, and they're trying desperately to recreate this. And these are fields that are well established. So, you know, heart failure, long-term care, the field of AI are all reaching out to say, okay, well, we see the success of CDTRP. How do we make this? How do we get our own CDTRP? And they're at early stages of trying to bring the community together, how to create a platform. This community has it. And you have something that is, you know, that is robust, that's well established. You have deep connections that have gone back for 10 years. I think, to me, I'm excited to see where the future goes for CDTRP, to build off of all the amazing work, to use the data and use the studies that we funded. What can we do next with the DPART data? What can we do next with all the TREG data that's been collected for years? What can we do next with all the specimens that everyone has decided that they want to share with each other across the country? So I think, you know, as a community, be proud that you have something that the rest of the scientific community in Canada is desperate and jealous of. What can you do with this now that, you know, you have a structure that's built in place to strengthen your research and honestly allow you to do research that, you know, as a single investigator trying to get your own study up and going, are just really hard to do on your own. Build in these collaborations, use the team that, you know, to do unbelievably amazing things. And so I'm excited for the next 10 years for CDTRP. I'm excited to come back in 10 years from now and celebrate the successes again. So congratulations on what you've put together.
Merci, merci Dave. Merci tout le monde.